The current phenomenon in China is almost invisible to our eyes but can have serious consequences for Chinese society and the world at large. It is directly related to the growing number of women choosing not to marry. This trend, combined with changes in birth policies, has led the country to face a concerning situation. Over the past 40 years, China has experienced significant population growth, driving its industrial economy with abundant labor force. However, by the end of 2022, something alarming happened. For the first time in over 60 years, the number of deaths surpassed births, resulting in a decrease of nearly 900,000 people in the population. The Chinese population is still immense, with approximately 1.4 billion inhabitants, making it an impressive proportion compared to the rest of the world. Nevertheless, the government fears that this population may start to decline drastically. Surveys conducted by demographic institutions in the country suggest that China could lose half of its population by the end of the century. Until 2016, the government's policy was to reduce births to avoid overpopulation, but they have recently shifted to implementing measures to stabilize the population. However, it seems that these changes came too late to reverse the trend. An example of this is the story of Christo, a 26-year-old Chinese woman interviewed by the BBC. She has no interest in marrying or having children, which is frowned upon in Chinese society, where it is common for women to marry before the age of 27. This cultural shift may result in a growing number of women choosing to remain single, raising concerns about declining birth rates. The situation is complex and requires a careful approach to ensure a sustainable future for China and the world, considering the significant role the country plays in the global economy. Population growth and the challenges related to the Chinese population are the result of a historical context that began decades ago during Mao Zedong's 50-year government. During this period, China faced one of the greatest crises in human history, with a devastating famine that led to the death of over 30 million people. This catastrophic event was accompanied by a significant decline in the number of births, resulting in a drastic population decrease. Interestingly, after overcoming this crisis, China experienced explosive growth in the number of births, driven by both internal factors and advances in medicine. This led to a constant population expansion, with Chinese families having an average of 7 children. However, this rapid growth was not welcomed by the government, which feared the impacts of overpopulation. In response, in the early 1970s, state policies of family planning were implemented, leading to a significant reduction in the birth rate. Although these measures had significant consequences for the following generations, the government was still not satisfied, and in the 1980s, they introduced the controversial one-child policy, which forced most families to have only one child. The effects of these policies were overwhelming, with approximately 20 million births avoided and around 15 million induced abortions. While the government managed to control population growth, it became evident that they might have gone too far. To understand the reason for this serious policy failure, it is important to grasp the concept of replacement rate. This measure is used to determine how many children each family should have to maintain a stable or growing population. Currently, the replacement rate is around 2.7 children per family, meaning families need to have an average of about 3 children to maintain the population size stable. China is facing a serious demographic crisis due to a low birth rate and the rapid aging of its population. This situation is a result of a historical context that began several decades ago during Mao Zedong's government. During that period, the average number of children per family in China consistently remained below 2, leading to severe consequences for the country. In 2016, the one-child policy was abolished, and a few years later, the three-child policy was attempted in an effort to find a balance, but the desired effect was not achieved. In 2021, families were allowed to have as many children as they wanted, but the change came too late as the culture of having only one child was deeply ingrained. A recent survey revealed that over 50% of Chinese people do not wish to have more than one child, primarily due to financial difficulties and work pressures. Despite the government's efforts to implement incentives and benefits for having more children, these measures seem to have little effect. The high cost of raising and supporting a large family makes this choice difficult for most citizens. Furthermore, the Chinese population is not balanced in terms of age. With the population aging, the younger generations face the additional challenge of caring for and supporting a large number of elderly individuals, placing a significant burden on them. Population aging is not exclusive to China, but the country is one of the most affected by this issue. There is fear that, in a few years, the number of young workers will be lower than that of retirees. This scenario can impact not only China but also other countries, including the global economy, as they have significant trade ties with the Chinese industry. While the Chinese economy is growing, much of the population, especially in rural areas, has not benefited from this economic advancement. This demographic crisis can have significant global impacts and is a complex issue that affects several Asian and European countries. It is essential to reflect on how these events can affect our lives, as the situation in China may have repercussions beyond its borders. The demographic crisis can have profound consequences for Chinese society and the world as a whole, demanding careful and collaborative solutions to address it. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing to the channel. We release videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with exclusive content on current events, specifically designed to keep you informed and enrich your knowledge. Until next time.